So today we're talking pink acrylic paint, and specifically we're looking at a permanent rose and a quinacridone red. And I'll go through, talk a little bit about both of these and do some color mixing tests to see if they're worth adding to your palette. But today's video is also a bit of a lesson, a reminder of two paints that have different names that are the same or have the same pigment but are different. So let's talk a little bit about pink. Pink is made when you add white to red, but not every red will make a really kind of bubblegum pink. So if you're looking for more of that bubblegum pink, these sorts of paints are what you're looking for. A red that has a bit of a violet tone to it. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that's kind of the gist that I generally look for when I'm wanting to paint like a pink flower or something like that. So let's talk about permanent rose. So I bought this tube of Winsor & Newton permanent rose quite a few years ago. I used it a bit, but I didn't use it a ton. As you can see, you know, it's probably 3/4 used, but still a decent amount of paint in there. And I bought it because I was struggling to get a pink that I really, really liked. So I bought this, it worked, and then I kind of tucked it away somewhere, forgot about it, and then have pulled it out more recently. Now this other color, Quinacridone Red, this is from Chroma Artist Acrylics. That is a small, tiny little company out of Vancouver, and they create their own acrylics. And I bought a set and it had this Quinacridone Red. So when I looked a little bit closely at the pigment numbers, they both have the same pigment number, PV19, and that means it's a type of violet paint. I call it a red, but the pigment itself is considered a violet. Both are quite transparent. If you know a little bit about paint, you might know that quinacridones are generally known to be transparent, and both of these paints are quite transparent, and they're kind of middle of the road price-wise. So I did some mixing tests just to see, you know, what do these two colors look like, but also how do they mix with others. So I'm just going to quickly show you. So I did a couple yellows, so a cool and a warm yellow, a couple reds, cool and a warm red, a couple blues, so we got our cool and warm blue, three somewhat common secondaries, so we've got dioxazine purple, sap green hue, cadmium orange, and then I add titanium white to each of my mixes because sometimes it can be really hard to see what color you've really mixed until you've added a bit of white. Okay, let me clear this out. So here's our mixing sheet. I have covered up the color mixes just so we can kind of talk them through bit by bit. So I started with, of course, permanent rose is here on the left and quinacridone red is here on the right. I started with, this is the pure color out of the tube, and then I added a little bit of white just so we could see how it looks once you tint it. Both are, like I mentioned before, very transparent. And what I found interesting, because I did expect these to look a little bit different, because PV19, the pigment that is used for these paints, they can be quite different depending how they're handled, how the manufacturer, I guess, creates it, that sort of a thing. And when I look at the label, this is pink, and this is a much, much darker color. But when I actually start using it, it's very, very similar out of the tube. And even when I go and tint it, very, very similar. So as we go through the color mixes, probably won't expect to see too big of a difference. So let's first look at the two yellows. So we've got our Hansa Yellow Lemon and our Cad-Free Yellow Medium. Now this column right here, that is where I had a lot more of either the permanent rose or the Quin Red, and this is where I had a lot more of the mixing color. So both make kind of like think of it like a strawberry lemonade color. When I get a color a bit like this, both make really nice colors of that. Or if you just really want to warm up your color or your yellow, you can add a little bit of the pink color. The Hansa Yellow Lemon is very, very transparent. So when I mix it with a bit of the permanent rose or Quin Red, no surprise there, also very, very transparent, which you can use wisely or you can struggle with. Depends if you like transparent colors or not. Now, next two are our two reds. Now, because these, despite being a PV pigment, which is, of course, a violet, I still consider them a red. You're not going to get dramatic changes once you mix with it. So again, this is a lot of the permanent rose. So you just kind of warm it up a little bit more. It also kind of dulls it a little bit, especially with the cad-free red medium. And a lot of times you might not want such a vivid color. So you can add just a touch of, like you might still want a red, but you can add just a touch of like a cad-free red medium, because the orange in that will kind of neutralize the violet tones in the Quin red or permanent rose. And then if you want to make it still a pink, but you want it to be a little bit purplier, you can add a touch of the Quin magenta as well. Now, when we look at the blues, ultramarine blue leans a little bit red, so you can get some really nice purples out of that. Or you can really darken your ultramarine blue. Again, you can, if you want to really dull down your kind of pink paint, you can add just a bit of ultramarine blue to it. Or if you want to darken your ultramarine blue, you can add a bit of the pink. Now, when I do these mixes, I'm not perfect about getting the exact same amount. So that's probably the variation where we see it's quite purple here. And you can make a nice, not overly intense purple using ultramarine blue. So that's really good to know. But you can also darken up your ultramarine blue and still have it be a blue. Phthalo blue green shade, you can really just dull down the electricity of the phthalo blue green shade using your Quin red or permanent rose. Or make a really nice dark color. So that's like a beautiful, beautiful dark blue, I think. Now let's move on to the secondaries. So dioxazine purple. So dioxazine purple is an intense color. And it really, maybe not intense color, it's a very strong mixing color. So just the tiniest little bit of the purple, the dioxazine purple, really knocks down the permanent rose or Quin red. So just be really careful if you're mixing dioxazine purple in with these two, because it's just so strong. And it's good to kind of neutralize, of course, the dioxazine purple. And because permanent rose and Quin red are on the violet side, they do really play nicely with each other. They neutralize a little bit, but you still get really nice colors that are definitely purple. Now let's look at the sap green hue. Now red and green are opposite on the color wheel. So you can make a nice brown. Like again, I wasn't perfect with exactly how much I was adding when I was mixing. So I was just kind of going, lots of green with a bit of the permanent rose or Quin red, but I definitely got kind of more towards the middle. So that's why we got this brown. So if you want a brown, sap green and Quin red, but permanent rose would probably do the similar mix. And last but not least, cadmium orange. Now, because permanent rose and Quin red, they have that violet undertone, whereas cadmium orange, it's an orange. Violet is closer to the blue. You can really neutralize your colors again. And that's just getting to know where colors lay on the color wheel and which ones will more successfully neutralize each other. I think these are still pretty vivid colors, which these would be really fantastic, if you really wanted to make kind of an orange color that pops. So that's my look at permanent rose, the Winsor & Newton version, and Quin red, the chroma version. Now, it also gets a little bit more complicated. I think everything to do with learning about acrylic paint colors gets more complicated than it looks on the surface, because as I was doing this, I looked at some gouache tubes I had and thought, oh, hey, Quin red. I could take a look at this. But then I thought, this label seems quite kind of let's see if you can see it better, kind of like an orangey red. And I thought that's unusual for something that is really a pinky red. So I looked at the label and lo and behold, it is, I'll show it again, PR 254, which is not a violet pigment. So PV19 is what these two are. So this is PR 254. So it's considered a true red pigment. And then I did a little swatch sheet so that we could see what it looks like. So gouache, if you're not familiar with gouache, it's an opaque color, kind of works, you can work with it similar to watercolors, but also it's a little bit different because it's quite opaque. So I did this top row. So this is the pure color straight out of the tube. And then here's where I added a bit more water. And then this row, I added a bit of white and then a bit more and a bit more white. So you can see, and it definitely is not a pink. I mean, yes, technically that's a pink, but it's not that bubblegum kind of violet pink that you might be thinking if you're thinking of a pink. So it's a lesson, of course, in, yes, you can look at the name, but the name doesn't necessarily match the pigment. Now this is a professional brand. It's, what is it? Shinhan Professional Gouache. And it's very nice if you ever get a chance to use it, but it's definitely different. Now, so I looked up this pigment and lo and behold, Pyrrole Red is the same pigment, so PR254. Now, these labels look a little bit different. Now I'm going to pull out an old mixing sheet from another video I did. This is when I did Pyrrole Red. Let me just move some of this other stuff. So this is when I did, of course, Pyrrole Red, and same pigment, very similar. So, reminder to take a look at your labels. You don't have to have things memorized, because I certainly don't have things memorized. But just know that sometimes when you go, hey, I heard good things about Quin Red, that can make a great pink, you might not. So just be careful. And one more, as I was getting everything set up for this video, lo and behold, what did I discover in my box of many acrylic paints? But, oh look, another Quin Red. So I took a look, PV19, I thought great. I was disappointed that I realized this after I had prepped up the swatch sheets, but that's okay. I did a quick little swatch this morning, just so I could see, is it similar, is it different to these two? And I would say very similar, especially straight out of the tube. I tried to put it on nice and thickly here so that we could see really how dark it is or what color it is, because sometimes when there's a lot of translucency, you get a bit of a different shade. But I would say very, very similar to these two. But I will say the part where I see a tiny hint of a difference is actually the lightest tint. And I would say that's just a little bit maybe more violet leaning than these other two. It's very minor. I don't think I would be unhappy purchasing any of these three in the future. I will absolutely pick one of them. Probably not Chroma, because I'm probably not going to be in Vancouver again, but or anytime in the near future. But you never know, if it starts getting sold a bit more widely, I might pick it up and I'd be very happy with it. I've definitely used a lot of it. And oh, one more thing. I did a little pair of paintings to really see how do these two work? How do these two colors work? So again, top one is Permanent Rose, bottom one, Quinacridone Red. And I just did a quick painting of a pink daisy, and it is fantastic to have a really nice pink for flowers. And that's where I use either the Permanent Rose or the Quinacridone Red, is when I'm painting something with florals. Because I don't tend to have a lot of need to paint anything else that's pink. I mean, there's the odd time, maybe I'm painting a flamingo or something like that, but for the most part, this is the subject matter that I'm using. And if I'm doing, an average landscape, this will be my violet leaning pink or violet leaning red. But I find Quin Magenta, when I'm doing florals, it's too violet. I don't like it for florals very much. I mean, yes, I can make it work, but if I'm trying to do a pink flower like this, I'm not going to be super happy with it unless I'm using PV19 of some sort. So that's my look at Permanent Rose, Quinacridone Red, and of course a lesson in the more you learn about pigments, the more you learn about paint colors, the more complicated it gets. But the more you learn, the more confident you are in learning your colors. Or learning to choose what you're going to choose. And I will say, the more you learn about colors, the more you will be able to see differences in colors. I don't see a dramatic difference between these two. 2 years down the line, I might. I don't care right now. I think they're close enough. Like I said before, I'm happy with any of these brands, even the golden one. Yeah, I will absolutely be purchasing similar colors in the future.